Please subscribe to Bit Stories channel to see more our videos. The Christmas party buzzed around him, a cacophony of laughter and festive cheer that felt 1,000,000 miles away from the icy dread gripping Travis's heart. Sabrina, his best friend's wife, leaned in, her concern palpable. He registered her proximity, a fleeting awareness of her physical attributes before forcing a smile. "Just not feeling the holiday spirit tonight, Sabrina," he mumbled, the lie heavy on his tongue. The weight of his impending actions pressed down on him, the inevitable hurt he was about to inflict on someone who didn't deserve it. Undeterred, Sabrina pulled up a chair, her warmth a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. "Spill it. Aunt Sabrina's here to listen," she urged, her hand reaching for his. He shook his head, feigning nonchalance. "Just some business matters next week. Nothing to get worked up about." Her playful grin followed. "How about a dance, then? Let's see if we can outshine Derek and Megan on the floor. Then, you buy me a drink, and we chat. There's something I need to ask you." He allowed himself to be swept onto the dance floor, the familiar rhythm of the music momentarily soothing. Sabrina's body melted into his, echoing the carefree dances of their high school years. But his mind remained miles away, fixated on Megan and Derek across the room, a scene playing on repeat in his mind. The painful revelations, the meticulously crafted plan to rectify the situation and exact his revenge, all of it swirled in his head. His marriage to Megan had been a fairy tale, a seemingly unshakable bond of love and passion. At least, that's how it had felt until the 4th of July. The belief that their love would last a lifetime, a shared journey until their dying days, had been shattered. Their children, thankfully grown and independent, would be hurt, but their maturity would help them navigate the aftermath. He knew what he had to do. He knew it with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul. The repetition only served to highlight his unwavering resolve. It was at their Independence Day gathering, a festive celebration by the creek, that the foundation of his world crumbled. He'd been retrieving supplies from the pantry when he overheard a conversation that turned his stomach. Sharon, Megan's sister, and Paula, a mutual friend, were whispering in the hallway. Sharon's laughter echoed, laced with a chilling casualness. "Travis is so oblivious. He believes whatever Meg tells him. We have an arrangement. If either of our husbands asks, we claim we're together. Most of the time we're not. But hey, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? Just look at Meg and Derek. They're inseparable at these gatherings. Neither Travis nor Sabrina suspects a thing. Meg says Derek's far better than Joel ever was. She dreads the day she has to stop seeing him because Travis or Sabrina find out." The shock was a physical blow, a visceral reaction that left him reeling. For the remainder of the evening, he watched Megan and Derek, desperately trying to rationalize Sharon's words as mere gossip. Yet the more he observed, the more the pieces clicked into place. Every glance, every touch. Suddenly everything was clear. He and Derek had been close, practically brothers, since childhood, a bond forged in the crucible of shared experiences. The betrayal was unfathomable, a breach of trust far deeper than a simple affair. It was a betrayal of their friendship, a violation of a bond that stretched back to their earliest memories. Their paths had diverged slightly after his 26-year military career, a recent retirement bringing him home after 2 years. Derek, having pursued higher education and launched a successful business, had become a prominent figure in their small town of 5,000. But the balance of power was about to shift. He leveraged his military connections, his skills sharpened over decades of service, skills he never anticipated needing again. Megan and Derek were completely unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. The initial shock and pain gave way to a carefully constructed plan. He didn't confront them immediately. Instead, he methodically gathered evidence, meticulously crafting a strategy and anticipating every possible countermove. He sought counsel from a respected attorney, a former military comrade, following legal advice scrupulously as they mapped out his approach to both the divorce and his plan to dismantle Derek and Megan. His thoughts drifted back to the dance, the painful memories overwhelming him, his intense gaze at Megan and Derek causing him to stumble. Sabrina, sensing his distress, followed his gaze, her expression shifting from concern to dawning understanding. "Travis?" she whispered, halting their dance, her grip tightening on his hand. "Oh my God! You know, don't you? How long?" She guided him towards the balcony, her voice trembling. "I've suspected for a while, but I got proof last week," she confessed, her eyes mirroring his pain. "What about you? When did you find out? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was planning to tell you tonight," he managed, his chest tightening, his voice catching in his throat. I'm going to ruin him. I'm divorcing her as soon as I've finished planning my move. I've been trying to figure out how to do this without harming you." Sabrina's hand caressed his cheek. "Travis, honey, do what you have to do. I've always known you'd never hurt me intentionally." Her voice cracked, tears welling. Then abruptly, she turned and fled back inside, leaving him stunned. A wave of nausea washed over him, the memory of the 4th of July party, the night he feigned intoxication and retreated early, flooding his mind. He leaned over the balcony, retching, the image of that night flashing before his eyes, the night he witnessed Megan's infidelity firsthand. Her subsequent scolding, her anger at his supposed drunken behavior, played out again in his memory. He'd left without a word, eventually returning to the hotel to inform the staff that he was unwell and needed to go home. He'd asked for Megan to be escorted home safely, a precaution despite his certainty that Derek would ensure her safe passage. The memory of Sabrina's departure and his fear of leaving her alone repeated incessantly in his mind. Back under the portico of the hotel, the painful discoveries of the past 6 months resurfaced. The videos captured on hidden cameras, the damning photographs taken on that fateful 4th of July. Opportunities to disprove his suspicions had been ignored as Megan rushed into Derek's arms the moment she believed him incapacitated. He watched, hidden, as their passion unfolded, the sounds and imagery burning themselves into his memory. The tender post-coital kiss cemented the betrayal in his mind. He'd taken photographs as evidence, then returned to his room and feigned sleep. Later, he'd confronted her at the party, his calculated words dripping with sarcasm. The next day, July 5th, he launched his plan. He contacted his friends, orchestrating a complex strategy. Throughout the summer, a steady stream of visitors flowed into his home, each contributing skills and expertise. Some even invested in the new company he'd formed. His first objective was acquiring shares in Derek's computer consulting firm. He knew several original investors were eager to sell, and Derek had been siphoning profits for years, legally but unfairly, enriching himself and a select few while leaving other shareholders with meager returns. They devised a plan, pushing the boundaries of legality. His friends purchased shares discreetly, remaining below the threshold requiring majority ownership reporting. Derek remained oblivious, continuing to vote on behalf of shareholders. Quietly, his friends transferred voting rights to him after each meeting. By year's end, they controlled nearly 73% of Derek's company, transferring their shares to his holding company in exchange for stock. Only Derek, Sabrina, and their children retained control of the remaining shares. January 10th, Derek's annual shareholders meeting, would mark the end of his reign. His thoughts returned to the present as he saw Sabrina emerging from the hotel. A mixture of sadness and determination welled within him. He followed her, watching her drive home. He followed her home, finding her sobbing uncontrollably. His heart softened, remembering their childhood friendship and the what-ifs of a life where he might have been with her instead of Derek. He held her, offering comfort until her sobs subsided. She pulled away, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh God, Travis, I'm so sorry. You're hurting, and I'm burdening you. What are we going to do?" He offered her his hand. "Coffee first, then I'll explain my plan." Her eyes widened. "Travis, no. Don't do anything rash. You don't know Derek. He'll have you in jail. He's got powerful connections. He'll ruin you," he reassured her. "It's not a physical attack. We considered that last summer but discarded it. This will be far worse, far more devastating." Her disbelief was palpable. "Summer? You've known since summer? How did you keep it so normal? Why didn't you tell me?" "I had to plan my revenge. I needed evidence and a way to protect you. Part of my torment tonight was you, figuring out how to tell you without causing more pain. You can have copies of the evidence. Things will get uncomfortable after the holidays. I want to give my kids a normal Christmas before filing." They spent an hour discussing the situation, him outlining his plan. She offered valuable insights. He left before Derek and Megan departed, ensuring no chance encounter. He suggested Sabrina return to the party, maintaining her composure and driving Megan and Derek home as if nothing was amiss. As he left, Sabrina kissed him softly. "Good night, Travis," she whispered. He woke the next morning to find Megan still asleep beside him, her intoxicated state, and the evidence of Derek's presence evident. His rage reignited, propelling him into action. Just one more month, he thought. One more month until his revenge was complete. The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived. They'd ensured Derek had proxies from the original shareholders, but had also obtained new proxies, dated after the cutoff, transferring voting rights to Travis. Derek's proxies became invalid, placing control firmly in his hands. They waited outside the meeting room, listening to Derek's presentation. As he called for new business, they entered. Derek's confusion quickly turned to anger as he realized the extent of Travis's control. "What? What are you trying to pull?" Travis stepped to the podium. "Your records are outdated, Derek. I own about 10% of Heartland Data Services and 51% of Southwest Missouri Holdings, which owns 64% of 4 states, giving me control of roughly 73% of your company." Derek's rage escalated. His accusations of friendship betrayal met with a challenge. The sheriff, the attorney, and Travis reacted. The sheriff warning Derek against physical assault, the attorney adding an assault charge to the pending lawsuits. The sheriff served Derek with Sabrina's divorce papers, a restraining order, and details of the alienation of affection lawsuit. The room erupted, reporters and onlookers pouring in as the story unfolded. Travis's phone rang, Megan on the other end. He coldly told her to watch a DVD, pack her things, and leave. He had business to attend to. The story exploded in the national media. Travis was shocked at the response, even hearing from army buddies who'd long suspected Megan's infidelity. He spoke to Megan once more, in their attorney's presence and with a recording device. Megan's attempts at manipulation and denial were met with his evidence of her repeated infidelities. Megan's rage was explosive, her justification of her actions highlighting her resentment of his deployments and her perception of neglect. She signed the divorce papers, spitting out curses as she stormed out. Megan moved to Florida, and the property settlement was favorable to Travis. Megan received half his pension and brokerage account, but he retained the property and his control of Derek's company. He retained more than 80% of their assets. Megan lived comfortably, but her past seemed to follow her. Travis and his friends took Derek's company private, reorganized it, and eventually went public, making substantial profits. He stepped down from the board, enjoying travels with his new wife. Sabrina received almost all of Derek's company stock in the divorce, profiting handsomely. Derek's life crumbled, forcing him to relocate to a smaller town and a menial job. Travis's revenge was complete, sweetened by financial success. Her eyes widened. "What? Travis, no. Don't do anything reckless. You don't truly understand Derek. He's influential. He could have you imprisoned. He'll destroy you if you confront him directly. I couldn't bear to see that happen." I offered a reassuring smile. "Sabrina, relax. I'm not planning a physical assault. Believe me, I've considered it. My friends and I discussed it last summer, but we dismissed it. My plan will inflict far greater pain on Derek than any physical violence. This will be far more devastating." Her voice rose in disbelief. "Summer? My God, you've known since summer? How did you manage to maintain normalcy for so long? And why didn't you confide in me? Damn it, I only began to suspect around Thanksgiving." I steadied my voice. "Sabrina, I had to plan my retribution. I needed to gather irrefutable evidence and devise a strategy to protect you, too. A significant part of my internal conflict tonight stemmed from you, figuring out how to break this news without causing you further anguish. You can have copies of all the evidence I've collected, but things will become intensely difficult after the holidays. I'm committed to providing my children with a normal Christmas before initiating legal proceedings. Please refrain from any action until after the new year. I strongly prefer we coordinate our actions. Consider your own plans. What do you intend to do? I'm divorcing that scoundrel, and I'm going to take him for everything he's worth. Once I've processed this hurt, I'll try to rebuild my life." We spent a considerable time discussing the situation. I reviewed the evidence I'd gathered, detailing my plan to dismantle both Derek and Megan. She agreed with most of my ideas and offered some remarkably helpful suggestions. Eventually, I realized I needed to leave before Derek and Megan exited the party. The last thing we needed was Derek witnessing us together. I suggested Sabrina return inside, feigning continued participation in the festivities, and drive Megan and Derek home as if nothing unusual had transpired. As I headed toward the exit, Sabrina pulled me close and kissed me softly. She gently cupped my face, offering a small, brave smile. "Good night, Travis," she whispered. I had no idea when my wife finally returned home. I awoke the following morning to find her beside me, still clearly intoxicated. Her dress was bunched around her waist, and I saw the remnants of Derek's ejaculate staining her and matted in her pubic hair. The sight ignited my fury. I rushed from the bedroom, collecting my clothes on the way to the kitchen. I dressed while the coffee brewed, my thoughts racing. One more month, just one more month. Then I would finally begin to settle the score with Megan and Derek for everything they had done to Sabrina and me. The anticipation burned like wildfire. I could scarcely wait. The day of Derek's company's annual shareholders meeting finally arrived. We had ensured that all the original shareholders provided Derek with proxies to vote on their behalf. However, we had also arranged for those same shareholders to sign new proxies with later dates, effectively transferring their voting rights to me. Because these new proxies were dated after the official deadline for stock ownership, Derek's proxies were rendered void. This meant I controlled the voting power. My friends and I gathered at the hotel hosting the meeting. We had agreed that I would assume the roles of president, chief operating officer, and chairman of the newly constituted board of directors, given that Derek hadn't staggered board terms. All members were up for re-election at each annual meeting. My new board comprised the friends who had purchased stock. We were joined by my attorney and the county sheriff, the latter present to serve Derek with Sabrina's divorce papers and to intervene if things escalated. We waited just outside the meeting room, listening as Derek went through the proceedings. When he requested any new business, clearly expecting none, we opened the doors and entered. "Travis," Derek said, his face a mixture of confusion and irritation. "What's happening? We're in the midst of a meeting." "Sorry I'm late, Derek," I replied calmly. "But I arrived just in time. I believe you requested any new business?" Derek frowned, puzzled. "Yes, but this is a shareholders meeting for my company. I hardly think you own any stock." I smiled. "Oh, Derek, I'm afraid your records may be slightly outdated. I personally own roughly 10% of Heartland Data Services and 51% of Southwest Missouri Holdings, which in turn owns 64% of 4 states. That grants me control of approximately 73% of this company." Derek's face contorted in disbelief. His repeated exclamations of "What?" highlighted his utter shock. He frantically searched through his documents before an assistant provided him with a binder labeled Current Shareholders. As he scanned the pages, his face shifted from white to a furious red. "What the hell? What are you attempting to do here?" I walked to the podium and took the microphone. By this point, each of Derek's associates had a replacement standing beside them. I began, "However, Derek, as no severance package is specified in your contract, none will be offered." Derek's face contorted in rage. "You son of a... I thought you were my friend. I should beat the living daylights out of you." He clenched his fist and lunged toward me. Instantly, the sheriff, my attorney, and I reacted. The sheriff intervened. "Sir, if you assault this man, I will be compelled to arrest you." I sneered at Derek. "Go ahead, you pathetic excuse for a man. Take your best shot. I'd relish the opportunity to use my military training to rearrange your face." My attorney smoothly interjected, "Mr. Fisher, I strongly advise you to attempt it. I would be delighted to add an assault charge to the other lawsuits currently pending against you." Derek froze, his anger replaced by confusion. "What lawsuits? What in God's name are you talking about?" The sheriff stepped forward, handing Derek a document. "You've been served," the sheriff said coolly. "These are divorce papers from your wife, Sabrina, citing infidelity. There's also a restraining order and an order for you to vacate her home. Furthermore, this packet includes details of the alienation of affection lawsuit filed by Mr. Blake. It alleges you intentionally alienated his wife from him, providing specific dates and times of your sexual encounters." A murmur had been rising in the background, now escalating into a roar. I turned to see the meeting room doors flung open, a throng of onlookers and reporters flooding the hallway. The local newspaper had apparently learned of the events, rumors of a memorable meeting spreading through town. As the noise intensified, I found satisfaction in knowing that, at that precise moment, my unfaithful wife was also being served with her own divorce papers. My phone rang. It was Megan. I smiled and answered, "Hey, Meg, I'm rather busy right now. Can this wait?" "You bastard!" she screamed. I turned to the phone, my voice cold. "Meg, be quiet. Go inside, watch the DVD in the player, then pack your belongings and get out of my house. I have business to attend to with your friend, Derek." I hung up, switching off my phone without waiting for a response. The local newspaper had a field day, and it didn't stop there. The story went national, making headlines on business pages across the country. I was astonished. Our company had nationwide connections, and the scandal rippled far beyond our small town. I even received calls from former army buddies, many admitting they'd suspected Megan's infidelity during my deployments. I only spoke to Megan once after the divorce papers were filed. Like most cheaters, she believed she could manipulate the situation and convince me to drop the case. We met in the attorney's office and she made a final attempt, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Travis, can we please discuss this just once?" she pleaded. "Honey, I know you're hurt, but Derek meant nothing to me. It's always been you. I've loved you since grade school. Give me a few minutes. If you still wish to proceed, I'll sign the papers." I glanced at the two attorneys beside us, then turned to Megan. "All right," I said. "I'll listen, but the attorneys must be present, and I want the entire conversation recorded. If you agree to that, I'll hear you out. Just this once." Reluctantly, she agreed, and we began our discussion. Once we were settled, Megan started. "Travis, you're overreacting. Yes, I cheated, and I'm truly sorry. But does that justify ending 25 years of marriage? Haven't you ever made mistakes when we were apart?" Derek persistently pursued me until I succumbed. I'm not proud, but it's not grounds to end our marriage. Is one mistake enough to discard me after all these years? I stared at her in disbelief before replying, "No, Meg. If it had been a single instance, perhaps I could have forgiven you, but it wasn't, was it? I have proof you've been sleeping with Derek for months. God knows how many other men there have been over the years. How about Joel? Care to provide his last name so I can have a chat with him? Or should we discuss all the men you slept with while I was deployed? Several friends have come forward, admitting they suspected your infidelity during my absences. What about them?" Megan's expression shifted from shock to fury. Her face flushed crimson, and she began shouting, "You bastard! How dare you accuse me like that? When we were younger, you'd leave for deployments, leaving me alone to manage the children and the household. Did you ever consider my needs? I needed reassurance, companionship, someone to talk to. Yes, I had male friends while you were gone. So what? It didn't affect you. You were preoccupied with your duty, and I wouldn't be surprised if you had some bar girl on the side. Of course, your loyal friends would never tell me." She stood, her anger boiling over. "I only slept with other men twice during our marriage while you were home, and it didn't cost you a thing. I always ensured you got your share, even after being with Joel or Derek. How dare you claim I wasn't a good wife? I played the part flawlessly. I attended all those military functions, smiled, and agreed with those simpering wives of your superiors, even when I couldn't stand them. I supported your career, and now you're discarding me because I had a few friends you didn't approve of? You can go to hell." With that, Megan grabbed the divorce papers, angrily scrawled her signature, and shoved them towards the stunned attorneys. She surveyed the room, her eyes blazing, then spat out, "Rot in hell, all of you." Before anyone could react, she stormed out. A few weeks later, Megan rented a moving truck, packed her belongings, and left. Our sons informed me that she'd relocated to a small retirement community in Florida. I haven't seen or spoken to her since. The property settlement favored me. Megan, in her fury, hadn't paid close attention to the agreement's details. Her attorney was either incompetent or too shocked by her outburst to intervene. Regardless, I received the lion's share of our assets. One reason for the delay between discovering her affair and filing for divorce was to allow me time to secure certain assets. While I couldn't move everything, I managed to protect what was most important. Ultimately, Megan received half my pension and half of our brokerage account. I retained the property, which had been in my family before our marriage, and my controlling interest in Derek's company. Overall, I kept over 80% of our assets. Even with her divorce settlement, Megan lived comfortably. But her reputation preceded her, and every serious relationship seemed to end when her past was revealed. I couldn't help but feel a touch of pity, but honestly, wouldn't you want to know the full story if you were dating her? As for Derek's company, my friends and I took it private, restructured the business, and eventually went public again, accumulating a considerable fortune. We hired professional management and listed the company on the NYSE. I stepped down from the board, and my new wife and I have been traveling the world ever since. She received almost all of Derek's company stock in the divorce, and when we went public, she made a significant profit as well. Derek's life in town became so unbearable that he was forced to leave. Last I heard, he was managing a small grocery store about 100 miles away, living in a cramped, low-income apartment. Revenge, as they say, is sweet, and sometimes you even profit handsomely from dumping a cheating spouse. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if the story was interesting.